observed much more. The beautiful glow that comes to a Muslim community over the course of a month, where people are not only fasting food and water and physical pleasures, but they're also trying to fast with their mind and with their eyes and to be good, to be better people. But they're also fasting sleep, because they spend a lot of time studying the scriptures together and discussing and doing things up till late at night at the various mosques. And there's a difference that comes over the community. We've seen it year after year as a result of this wonderful sacrifice. They're better people. And not only part of fasting is self-denial, but it's also being more sensitive to those people who are hungry. About 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm thinking, number one, there's 2 billion Muslims out there trying to do this too today, so I have company, I'm not alone. But number two, I think, what if I didn't have the option to eat at sundown? People out there on the streets have to just keep going. They have to keep working, they have to keep doing in spite of the hunger. And so I appreciate the courage it takes to carry on even though there is no food available to them. Well, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we not only fast food and water, but we give to the poor. On that first Sunday, we donate for the people who are poor themselves. All they're asked is to give what it would have cost you for a meal. For the rest of us, we are asked to give generously. And just a brief incident. Years ago, when I was serving over a congregation as bishop in Long Beach, there was a knock at our door. And I went to the door, and there was a lady there that really was in tears. And I saw a car outside full of children. She had left her husband up in the San Francisco area. That morning, she found out that he'd been abusing the children. And she had to get out of there. So she got in the car, loaded up all the kids, and came down and looked in the Long Beach area, looked in and found I was bishop over that congregation, and she came to the door and said, we're in need of help. Now, I could give her help because of the money that had been donated to the fast offering fund within our ward. That's our local congregation. And so I had ready cash available. We took in that family. We brought in the kids, and Judy fed them supper, and I got on the phone. We found someone that would rent her a house, and I had the money to pay for her rent and all the necessary costs of her housing. But also we basically took over that family and took care of them for a number of years. The purpose of our welfare program is to help people become self-reliant. And so we assist people at the same time we try to help them to develop skills and the background so they can take care of themselves. We paid for her tuition to Long Beach Community College, and she got a degree and was able to, today she's supporting her family, and her children have matured, and they've also been to school. All that was because, for that one family, and I could multiple that many times of many other families, that was because of people gave on Fast Sunday. And so that's, we see our purpose is of charity is to help people to raise themselves. But for a while there, we have to move right in and assist them on it.
But you also help people who are not members.
Yes, that's a good point that my wife is making there, is that anyone who comes to our bishop, non-member, whatever comes for aid, we will support. We help people, non-members, and out of our funds, we help throughout the world our humanitarian program. Dr. Namasa has been to Salt Lake City and seen our program. there where it's warehouses full of food and clothing and other necessities of life are distributed throughout the world to help people in need.
And there is a big store as big as Costco with no cashier. Rabbi Beniak, I think that this question suits you. How about fasting in Judaism?
So, of course, we have the custom of fasting in Judaism. Mondays and Thursdays are days when people used to fast on a regular basis. Not as commonly practiced as it used to be. I know that Mondays and Thursdays was also a fast day in Muslim circles as well. It's also the custom that we have a 24-hour fast day, 25-hour fast day that exists at least twice a year at Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and at the day of Tisha B'Av, the Day of Mourning, or other days in which similar fasts take place. I want to just associate myself with the last remarks. The LDS community is one of the few communities that strives for a kind of help that allows people to move into independence. And that is a key, the highest form of help that you can give a person. Anonymous, so that they have no embarrassment and shame, and also that they are able to conduct their lives without the need of future help. Teaching a person to fish as opposed to just giving them a fish. I wish that we as a society were much closer to that ideal than we are. Steve Lopez's article today in the LA Times with a tremendous amount of homeless people here in Los Angeles, and with no end in sight. It seems that we have failed as a community, we have moved in the direction collectively of passing bond issues and taxing ourselves. I'm proud to say that my son is involved in major efforts building shelters for homeless and low-income people. I feel that his commitment to that work comes out of the teaching he received at our home. But we are a long way away from having addressed this issue. And every week I am downtown, or every week I'm by the underpasses at Washington and Venice Boulevard. It's very clear that we are a long way from that. We have dozens and dozens of people who have tents, and this has been going on. It seems to get worse. We will hear the report about where we've gone with this issue. I think that we are still challenged to live up to the ideals. Thank you.
Aziza, we know what is your fast. Your fasting, we know that. But what about charity in Islam? If you want to talk about fasting, you are going to.
Beautiful, thank you. I'll start with charity and sadaqah. It was interesting. In Islam, there's a lot on charity and on giving and sadaqah. My family and I have a little sadaqah box, and it sits on our dining table. And the boys, who are 5 and 8, like to put in the money, and then we talk about where we're going to give to. The reason why we do that is because sadaqah is very consistent in Islam. It's actually all the way through the Quran. It's like we've woven like a thread. There's this cluster of verses that are actually in Surah Al-Baqarah towards the middle end. And I encourage you to go back and read them because I think they're like honey on the heart. Like they really are deeply inspiring. And so some of the things that this particular constellation of verses says is that giving your wealth away it's something that God is asking and tells us to do, but it's not something that we're doing for God. We're doing it for our own souls, And so I think, and I ask myself, what's my own soul worth? What am I going to give that is worthy of my soul? And then the other three things that really stand out in this constellation is that giving is like being a garden on a hill, where the water falls from the sky and allows for things to grow, but also even when there isn't water falling from the sky, the dew will keep and sustain the garden. And so even when, like there's so many things that happen that we grow from when we give. And the verses also remind us that one single kernel of corn, when it is planted, will yield 100 more kernels. And so, like, it's like this multiplying effect. Is that even when you give, like, there's more that comes, not only to you, but to the whole community around you. And so, like so I hope you go back and you read them. The last thing that it says in this cluster of verses is that when you give, and you think of what you should be giving, you shouldn't give what you would only receive with your eyes closed. So as you start to consider, like, how much is this, this cause worth? How much does it mean to relieve the pain of a family? Like, would I receive this gift from somebody else and think, that's nice, thank you? Or would I receive that same amount of money and think, wow, this is really a gift? And so each of us is different in the different places of how much wealth we have. But the Quran is actually really clear in that each of us need to consider and contemplate what it is that both our souls are worth, what kind of a garden do we want to cultivate for ourselves, our families, and our communities, and what would we give and make sure that we're wanting to receive what we'd only receive with our eyes closed. And there's actually 7 things that your charity or your sadaqah can go towards. The first in a list is to give to the needy. The second is I think that's me, is for those who you are in charge of. The third is for the softening of hearts, to win people's hearts over. The fourth is for freeing people from bondage, so freeing people from slavery or from perpetual debt. The fifth is people who are overburdened by debt, to create relief for them. The sixth is the struggle in God's cause. And the seventh is the wayfarer. So if somebody asks, you are to give in Islam. It is an important part of our faith and how we work and we live and we take care of the people around us. And for me, like, I think of giving and Islam, and especially in my really reflecting on Ramadan, and how, like, in the verses it says that we shouldn't be squandering our resources. We shouldn't be squandering our blessings that God has given us. And at the beginning of Ramadan this year, I decided, you know what, I'm going to really make an intentional effort to see what it is that I can do. And so we've been recycling as a family, and we used to have trash bags that, like, literally that nice big, like a solid trash can, the black ones that you put on the curb. We used to barely, like, be able to close the lid. Now at the end of Ramadan, we barely put in one sack of trash. And the way that we've also shifted from that is, like, we're composting our food, we're recycling and we're reusing. But the beginning of Ramadan, I took a couple of seeds that were left over from a salad, just like tomato seeds. And I took them and I put them in some soil, and I put some water on top of them. Now those tomato seeds, which I otherwise would have easily thrown in the trash not too long ago, have turned into 18 beautiful tomato plants. And there's no possible way that I can grow 18 tomato plants and justify that much food for the family. So now I'm going to give those away. And they give them away because like, just by being a little bit more conscious about my resources, like there is so much bounty and generosity where you can continue to give to your neighbors and the people around you. And to me, that is the beauty of both fasting during Ramadan and also the sadaqah that comes with it.
Archbishop, fasting in Christianity.
Outside of the traditional fasting that we do during Lent and at times on special occasions, it depends on the demographics. In the Ecumenical Catholic Church, it depends where you are. And I'm going to start with Hawaii, for example. There's a lot of homeless. There's a lot of people without homes. There's people without food. There's people without clothing. And we always tell everybody, as John says, love one another as I have loved you, and charity begins at home. You need to take care of what's at home first before you can give charity or anything to anybody else. We would fast for example, when the attack on the Muslims, we as a church said this month we're going to fast for those souls that were lost, for their families, for the Muslims. We take that time to fast. We don't force anybody. It's an option. We as the clergy, because some are married and have families, we include our families in the fasting. We don't make it a must, but we leave it up to their hearts and what they want to fast and how long they want to fast. Charity and fasting goes together with the Ecumenical Catholics because, like Sister here, we talk about giving to the poor, to the homeless, to the food. In many of our churches, we have every other Saturday, we open up the doors of the church for the homeless to come in to pick up clothing, to pick up non-perishable foods, plus we provide them a hot lunch to go. And every other Saturday, they have that opportunity to come. Doesn't matter, they come back, the same ones come back. It's just to provide for them and to give them nourishment. And we'll be starting in our parish here, as we do in our national churches, every worship service we have on Sunday, at the end, we connect with some of the restaurants around us, and they bring food to the church, and we feed the homeless. The funny thing though, we tell the homeless, you don't just come for the meal. Come and thank God for the meal. Come and pray with us. So they come, and they pray. They give thanks, and afterwards, we feed them. And during the winter time, I was in Detroit, and that's the worst time of the year for someone to be on the streets. And what the primate did was he opened up the gates to the parking lot, he popped up tents, and he told the homeless, you need to come, get out of the weather, this is where you come. I don't want you seeing you on the benches out there. And whatever we could provide, blankets or bedding, and as a family, they all come and they bundle up. And this is a way of charity. And also, this is also a way of fasting, because many of us, fasting is not only necessarily food, but what you give up, because you want to take care of somebody else. And we provide a lot of our own personal funds that me myself, sometimes I'm on the road, I've got meetings, and I'm hungry and I want to eat, but yet I know there's somebody back in the church I'm going to meet that has no food, so I'm going to go pick up lunch and I'm going to take it to that person, and so that individual or family can eat. So this is how we, amongst our own community and where we are and the demographics and what city, what country, there's no doctrine as to how to fast and how to give charity. It's just as God moves us and as God tells us in the gospel to love one another as I have loved you.
Rabbi Gottlieb, beside the charity, there are donations that the people make for the well-being of the society. How do you compare this with the charity?
Well,
If you want to talk about fasting, you can do that too.
I think I speak briefly about charity and fasting. The word tzedakah has been used that in the Jewish tradition, it's not being just compassionate, it's the right it's the just thing to do. It's a responsibility because we're all interrelated. We're all connected. Charity is meaningless if we're not connected to the other person. We don't. Our heart is hard, and we don't feel. So we have to realize that every human being is created in the image of God. That's the primary teaching. So when we see the homeless on the street, it breaks our heart, and it makes us feel ashamed, and we wonder what we can do about it. There has to be sophisticated thinking. It's too late just to give a person a piece of bread after they're all broken down in this way. There has to be prevention and treatment and aftercare. How can we prevent what's happening in our society? Some of the synagogues in Los Angeles are now opening their parking lots for people to park in there. People are living in their cars, the homeless. They're giving them showers, they're giving them food, they're trying to train them for jobs. When I was a rabbi in Santa Monica years ago, in Santa Monica I was on the homeless task force, and they created something called Swash Lot, that each homeless person needs to have access to showers, to lockers to put their belongings there, and also training so that they can be clean enough and trained to go for a job interview, to find a job, unless a person is given that independence, that capacity, to come right back to the homeless state again. In the Jewish tradition, we're taught about the same thing I spoke about, the seventh year. The seventh year also, all servants were set free, because we don't own them. Every human being is owned by God or the land, but when the servant is sent out, the commandment is that you have to give them enough money to sustain themselves, or else they'll come back in servitude again. In our prison system in Los Angeles, the figures of recidivism, people who leave the prisons without educational training, without any funding, they come right back to the prison system. They have to rob again just to survive. So we have to train people. That's the highest form of charity, giving a loan so a person can sustain himself or herself. In the system of tzedakah, it's not just to give, but to give with a smile. The ethics teaches us that one should not say what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours, but to say what's mine is yours and what yours is yours. To give is to live. To give is not to give away. We're given, if we have wealth, it's a gift. We need to have gratitude for it, but it's not ultimately our ownership. It's for us to share our blessings with other people. In terms of fasting, the prophets say, this is the fast that I give to you, to share with the poor, to take care of the impoverished, to help the widow and the orphan. It says in the prophets, it's not to give a sacrifice to God, that's not a fast. The fast is to sacrifice your ego and to realize that you're here to be a soul being, to help others. You can only do that when you learn how to sacrifice, when you learn that it's not the ego and the greed that runs you, but you're just here to share your life with other people. So just took down a few notes that I wanted to tell you, but I think I covered most of it. Essentially, just to sum up, in Judaism, tzedakah is a commandment. It's not something you're doing because you're a nice person. You must give 1/10 of your wealth, and you must give on a consistent basis, etc. And you must treat human beings as created in the image of God, so that the way you give is with a smile, is with your heart, not just throwing tzedakah at them. It has to be a relationship with people, and it all comes back to the idea that what we own is not ours. What we own is a gift from God, and therefore we have a natural proclivity to share that with other people. And finally, when we look at people today who are homeless, it's not enough just to give them food at that moment. You have to create the structure, that the opportunity for them to earn a living, to go out in a way that they can interview and find a job, and the egregious effects of capitalism and the need to preserve the wealth and just return it back to others is obviated in our Jewish tradition by saying what's mine is yours and what's yours is yours, rather than what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. Get a job. If you don't have it, it's your fault. Blaming the victim. That is a false ideology and one that Judaism rejects. I'll say amen.
Oh, yes, I'd be happy to talk about it. The expression that came to my mind was, there for the grace of God go I. So when you see someone who's suffering and in need. I'd like to speak specifically about what we've done at my church, and talking about utilizing a parking lot. So in the mid-'80s, and that was around the time when you, Rabbi Gottlieb, were working on Schwarzschlag, we talked about what we could do with our church, and we had a parking lot that we decided to utilize for two uses. One would be primarily for helping homeless children and their families. And the other was a separate project to house low-income seniors. So I want to speak about helping the homeless children and their families. The family homelessness is the hidden homeless. You don't see children lying on the street, and that's because their families are hiding them and hiding them well. They may be in the back seat of a car, and then the parent will take them to McDonald's in the morning so they can wash their face and brush their teeth, and they can drop them off at school while the parent tries to find work and housing. They may be staying in someone's garage, they may be staying in someone's living room. The longer they are homeless, the more dangerous the situation becomes, the more children tend to be abused, the more vulnerable they are. So in 1997, we opened up Family Place on church parking lot land, which was primarily funded by HUD and the federal government, but also we had worked with local community groups, synagogues. We set up interfaith groups to help us, and worked also with the local schools so that the children could go to school there. So in Family Place, which is presently on the church parking lot in Santa Monica, we have 22 apartments for homeless families and their children, and the families stay there for approximately 6 to 9 months while we have case managers helping them to find permanent housing and stability. And unfortunately, the problem has only gotten worse over the years. And about approximately 12 years ago, we raised funds to buy a little motel. We bought a little motel in Culver City, and on the corner of Washington and Beethoven. And we have 18 units there. We have been working with Culver City to support us and help us with the regulations. So we have 18 units with bunk beds, so we have 18 families that can stay there up to 5 months while we help them to find permanent housing. We've raised money for move-in fees, and we continue to follow these families. Of course, the problem has continued to get worse, and as we look to what else we could do and work with further funding, we learned that the Compton School District had about 1,200 homeless children in their school system. And so now we have staff working with the Compton School District to help families find housing and also employment. And the latest thing that we've done is work with the youth that have transitioned out of foster care between the ages of 17 and 24. If they are pregnant and have children, we are housing them. We have 18 units now that we're master leasing through county funds in South LA. In total, per night, we're housing about 515 people per night. So this is was an idea, was a seed that was planted. Could we do this? Where do we begin? And we just kept going forward. It has a life of its own now, and other people support it and get involved. But it always reminds me of the possibilities of what can be done. And it's been obviously difficult over the years, and there have been problems. We've continued to provide the resources and continue to expand with that. So I share that because we can't give up on trying to do things and trying to help. And of course the church does other things. We have been involved going to New Orleans after Katrina. We've gone down there many years. We have a mission team that's been going to Haiti for the past 10 years helping. We couldn't send them this year because of the State Department said it wasn't safe for us to be there, so we took the money we raised for the mission trip and we sent it so we could buy goats for families, because for a family to have a goat gives them some prosperity and some way forward. So these are some of the things that we have been able to do and continue to do, and it just shows you the possibility of saying yes to something and of working at it, of planting the seed and watering it and going forward. And I just want to mention briefly, when you talk about fasting, it's not something I'm good at, but when I think about Lent, and Lent is 40 days, you know, that we're usually giving up something, we're fasting, or we're giving up chocolate cake, or shopping, or something like that. I've been able to utilize that, and others of us, to really look at how we want to live better lives. So some of the things that people in my community have done is fasted from gossip for 40 days. Exactly. So to think about that in your life, when you think about fasting, it's not just fasting from food and the self-denial. It's fasting to live better and to find a better way of moving forward. And the 40 days sometimes helps you, because when you have done something for 40 days, you realize, oh, I could perhaps continue this longer. And also you could add something. Maybe there's a behavior that needs to change in a positive way, that you add that to your life, and you try that for those 40 days, or you try that when you're fasting during Ramadan, or during Yom Kippur, or during another...
You said you're not a preach. You're doing a good job.
Oh.
Okay. I'm sorry because of the short time that we have left. The program that we have is going to continue throughout the year in Radio Iran 670 on Mondays, every Monday, or the first Monday of the month, from 1 to 2. So far I had Rabbi Bassin, Brother Giron, Rabbi Beliak, Aziza Hassan, Rabbi Gottlieb, and in the future we have the rest of our guests in the radio program. I invite you to listen to the radio 670 AM. Program is not in Farsi, it's in English, but the whole radio is in Farsi. 1 to 2 on Mondays, but this month, exceptionally, is going to be on Thursday, June 13, 2 to 3. So that would be good. Let's finish with a short prayer by everybody. Start with service.
Put me on the spot. Just this past Shabbat, we finished the reading of one book of Torah, moving on to the next from Leviticus to Numbers. And between the books of Torah in this moment of transition, we say, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, and let us strengthen one another.
Dear Father in heaven, we approach thee at this time grateful for the wonderful spirit that has been here, and for all of our brothers and sisters in this room who are touched and inspired to go forth and be better people. Many of us have come here fasting. We pray for those who do not have a choice to eat at sundown, that must spend the rest of the evening, the rest of this day,